NASA now believes that this is the perfect moment to turn our attention back to Venus. This shift follows the recent discovery suggesting possible signs of life on the planet. If you went back and looked through NASA's records from the 1960s, you would find them describing Venus as a planet of punishment. At the same time, Mars was already being shaped as humanity's destined target. It wasn't unusual for space agencies to label distant planets dramatically during the intense space race. Back then, while America was looking toward Mars, the Soviet Union set its sights on Venus, a planet that showed almost no hope for life, yet still drew incredible effort and investment from the Soviets, who didn't end their Venus missions until after the fall of the Soviet Union. Thanks to astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, we finally have some better insights into why Venus captured such intense Soviet interest. Today we're diving deep into declassified photos taken by the Soviet Union on Venus. The collapse of the Soviet Union wasn't just a political turning point, it also pulled many secrets down with it. The Soviets had a powerful culture of secrecy, operating one of the most formidable intelligence agencies in history and keeping their extraterrestrial efforts shrouded in mystery. Long before the United States rose to dominate space exploration, it was the Soviets leading the charge, especially when it came to Venus. Their space program, rich with both victories and failures, concentrated heavily on the harsh, alien world of Venus. In the Russian language, Venus is called Venera, which became the name for the series of missions launched from 1961 to 1983. During this same period, the US was putting its resources into landing on the Moon. In an interesting strategic choice, the Soviets decided to pour massive effort into studying Venus instead. Was it just a scientific endeavor? Or did they see Venus as a potential military outpost or even a colony if they found signs of life? It's hard to say for sure. During the Cold War, Soviet missions were cloaked in secrecy. Almost everything we know today about these missions comes from declassified documents and recovered archival evidence, and even that leaves many questions unanswered. What we do know is staggering. The Soviets didn't just land on Venus once or even 3 times. They launched 28 expensive rockets towards Venus. Out of those, 13 successfully entered the planet's thick atmosphere, and 8 managed to land. These missions put the Soviet Union ahead in planetary exploration at a time when America was still focused more on satellites and early lunar missions. In fact, many textbooks gloss over the fact that the Soviet Union was the first to send a probe into the atmosphere of another planet. They were also the first to achieve a soft landing and to capture the first pictures and sounds from the surface of another world, an incredible achievement that doesn't get the recognition it deserves. If you're wondering why these achievements aren't celebrated more widely, the Soviet obsession with secrecy plays a big part. After the USSR collapsed in 1992, their space agency was disbanded and later reformed as Roscosmos. In the chaos, much historical data was either lost or deliberately destroyed, making it hard to fully reconstruct the story of the Venera missions. We can only speculate about the exact motivations behind sending 28 rockets to Venus. However, the most reasonable guess is that it had a lot to do with cost efficiency. Venus, after all, is closer to Earth than Mars and thus cheaper and quicker to reach. This doesn't mean the Soviets weren't genuinely curious about Venus itself. They were investigating important scientific factors: the presence of water, the impact of solar radiation, and the planet's overall conditions. Without the data from the Venera missions, we would have struggled to understand Venus's extremely high temperatures, thick atmosphere, and crushing atmospheric pressure. Modern scientists know that Venus is a hellish place where temperatures are hot enough to melt lead and liquid water is practically non-existent. But back in the day, none of this was certain, and the USSR's contributions were vital to uncovering these truths. At that time, Venus still seemed mysterious and worth exploring, even if the goal was only to outpace the Americans. Colonizing Mars or studying it in detail wasn't off the table for the Soviets, but it was much more expensive. Venus, on the other hand, sits just about 40 million kilometers away from Earth, compared to Mars' average distance of 250 million kilometers. That difference meant much lower costs and quicker missions. For a country like the Soviet Union, whose economy was already strained, targeting Venus was the smart move financially, especially when compared to the United States, which had the resources to think bigger. However, it's important to remember that the Soviets faced major technical challenges too. Their spacecraft weren't capable of traveling vast distances easily, and they frequently lost contact with probes mid-mission. A shorter, closer trip to Venus was far more manageable and realistic for them. But we can't talk about the Venera missions without mentioning the broader context of the space race. The Soviets had already shaken the world by launching Sputnik 1 in 1957, marking the dawn of the space age. It was a massive win that gave them the momentum to keep pushing forward and maintain dominance for years to come. Meanwhile, the US was facing a different set of challenges. While NASA would later become famous for the Apollo missions to the Moon, its early attempts to explore Venus ended badly. Throughout the 1960s, American probes launched toward Venus repeatedly failed, creating what many called the Venus curse. Every mission seemed doomed from the start. And while America struggled, the Soviet Union exploited the opportunity, focusing even harder on Venus. At that point, both superpowers were desperate to win the space race, but by targeting different goals, the Soviets managed to secure critical victories the Americans missed. Rather than chase NASA's focus on the Moon, the Soviets carved out a niche for themselves by mastering Venus exploration. Of course, this division wasn't without its politics and media manipulation. In America, Venus was often labeled as a dead planet or an evil world, while Mars was painted as humanity's future home. These labels served to justify NASA's failures and redirect public interest. But for the Soviet Union, none of that mattered. They had a clear goal: to outshine the United States, and in many ways they succeeded spectacularly. Today, the Venera missions are almost forgotten outside of space history circles. Yet they were ambitious, daring, and remarkably complex for their time. If we had to pinpoint a single event that truly marked the beginning of deep space exploration, it would be the Venera missions, not Apollo. Starting in the 1950s, Soviet engineers began experimenting with probe designs and technical solutions. Over the next 3 decades, they refined these designs, launched mission after mission, and pushed the boundaries of what humanity could achieve in space, even if history hasn't given them the credit they truly deserve. As the Cold War intensified, the Soviet Union pressed forward with its interplanetary ambitions, particularly through the Venera program. This effort coincided with a time of immense global tension, yet it turned out to be an advantage for the Soviets. In the early years of the Cold War, the USSR had access to greater technical resources and manpower compared to the United States. This upper hand proved vital in boosting their space exploration capabilities. As a result, they began launching larger and more durable rockets capable of surviving high altitudes and traveling vast interplanetary distances, laying the groundwork for groundbreaking missions to Venus. The Soviets didn't limit their efforts to simple launches. They pursued both manned and unmanned spacecraft programs with remarkable determination. At the same time, Soviet scientists and engineers were rigorously performing advanced calculations and simulations to ensure precise navigation toward Venus. In the background, their Mars missions were progressing steadily as well. Yet, for the Soviet Space Agency, the top priority remained the development of highly complex instrumentation capable of surviving and operating in the hostile environment of Venus. This intense focus would soon lead to a historic breakthrough that changed the trajectory of space exploration forever. In 1966, the Soviet Union achieved an extraordinary milestone by launching Venera 3, making it the first human-made object to enter the atmosphere of Venus and make contact with the planet's surface. Although communication was lost before data could be transmitted back to Earth, this momentous event marked a significant escalation in the space race. Unlike American missions, which at that point were often plagued with setbacks and failures, the Soviet space program managed to push forward. Their steady progress positioned them at the forefront of planetary exploration, with Venera 3 symbolizing both technological prowess and national pride. Despite the steady advancement of the program, early designs had critical limitations that could have compromised future missions. However, the Soviets quickly adapted, refining their spacecraft designs and producing more sophisticated rockets. By the 1970s, their engineering innovations culminated in the dual launches of Venera 4 and Venera 5. This strategy of dual launches marked a pivotal shift in the exploration of Venus. According to many historians, the 1970s represented the golden decade of space exploration, with the Soviet Union leading the charge through aggressive innovation and tactical planning in their Venera missions. Understanding why the Soviet agency chose to launch dual missions to Venus requires appreciating the immense challenges of interplanetary travel. Gathering comprehensive data from a planet like Venus demanded extremely advanced instrumentation. The first spacecraft, Venera 4, was designed to study the atmospheric composition and surface pressure, while Venera 5 was modified based on lessons learned to dig even deeper into Venus' harsh environment. Rather than simply repeating the first experiment, the Soviets optimized the second probe to handle even higher levels of temperature, pressure, and radiation, aiming to gather broader and more detailed information about the mysterious planet. By the mid-1970s, the Venera program entered its most advanced phase. Years of painstaking research, development, and testing had positioned the USSR for even more ambitious endeavors. Every prior mission contributed critical data, refined technologies, and enhanced spacecraft designs. Now, the Soviets shifted their focus from preliminary testing to true exploratory missions. Their efforts culminated with the launch of Venera 7, a probe that marked a major leap forward in human achievement. Venera 7 became the first spacecraft to successfully transmit data from the surface of another planet, surviving Venus' brutal conditions long enough to send precious scientific information back to Earth. At this point, Soviet scientists had already confirmed Venus' extreme surface conditions, including crushing atmospheric pressures and blistering surface temperatures. Their next bold move was to try to record actual sounds from Venus' environment, a challenge that pushed the limits of their technology even further. In the mid-1980s, the Soviets launched Venera 13, a mission that would outperform all previous efforts in complexity and success. Venera 13 captured the first full-color panoramic images of Venus' surface, revealing an alien landscape of rugged rocks and volcanic plains. Simultaneously, Venera 14 gathered complementary data, strengthening humanity's understanding of Earth's hostile sister planet. Because the Soviet Union had been the first nation to physically reach and study Venus, its space agency saw the planet as a symbolic and scientific frontier. Now, with renewed ambitions, Russia is planning a new Venus exploration program. A collaboration between Roscosmos and NASA, the upcoming Venera D mission is set to build on the original Venera legacy. Venera means enduring in Russian, fitting for the long-term vision of this mission. Scheduled for launch in the late 2020s or early 2030s, Venera D aims to investigate Venus' atmosphere, geological history, and search for signs of past or present habitability, with an orbiter, a lander, and possibly an atmospheric balloon. The enduring legacy of the original Venera missions reaches far beyond their immediate scientific accomplishments. They symbolize a pinnacle of human imagination, resilience, and ambition, especially given the era's political and technological hurdles. While facing daunting challenges, from engineering difficulties to environmental extremes, the Soviets maintained an unrelenting commitment to unlocking Venus' secrets. Their robotic probes pioneered techniques that would shape planetary science forever, enabling humanity to study other worlds without setting foot on them. The Venera program stands as a testament to how persistence and innovation can open up entirely new frontiers in human knowledge. The extreme conditions of Venus were unlike anything encountered on Earth, and the data collected by the Venera missions revealed a planet dominated by scorching temperatures, immense atmospheric pressure, and a toxic atmosphere rich in carbon dioxide. These revelations reshaped scientific theories about Venus and set a new standard for designing spacecraft that could survive extreme environments. Innovations like heat-resistant materials, robust communication systems, and reinforced landing mechanisms emerged directly from Venera's challenges, later influencing mission designs for Mars, the outer planets, and even modern deep space exploration. Beyond their technical breakthroughs, the Venera missions also carried enormous social and political weight. During the intense years of the space race, these missions became symbols of Soviet prestige and intellectual superiority. Every successful landing or transmission from Venus was a statement of the USSR's technological capabilities. As each Venera mission unfolded, the global community watched with intense interest, recognizing that these achievements expanded not only national pride but humanity's collective understanding of the solar system, proving that reaching other planets was no longer just a dream but an attainable reality. One of the crowning achievements of the Venera program was the soft landing of Venera 7 on Venus' surface in 1970. This historic success marked the first time data was transmitted from the surface of another planet, showcasing the Soviets' ability to engineer spacecraft tough enough to endure Venus' hellish conditions. In addition to scientific instruments, many Venera spacecraft were equipped with cameras that captured the first detailed images of Venus' rocky volcanic landscape. These early photos helped scientists piece together the geological history of a world that had once been considered Earth's twin. The panoramic photographs captured by missions such as Venera 13 and 14 provided even more stunning insights into Venus topography. The images showed vast volcanic plains and fractured rocks, painting a picture of a planet shaped by powerful geological forces. Despite these successes, the Venera missions were not without setbacks. Some probes failed to reach Venus, while others succumbed to technical failures caused by the planet's harsh environment before they could transmit meaningful data. The crushing atmospheric pressure, temperatures exceeding 450 degrees Celsius, 842 degrees Fahrenheit, and clouds of corrosive sulfuric acid posed nearly insurmountable obstacles for early spacecraft designs. Nonetheless, the perseverance of Soviet scientists and engineers paid off. They continued refining their designs, learning from each mission's successes and failures. Their tenacity not only expanded our knowledge of Venus but also laid the foundation for future missions to other planets. The legacy of the Venera program lives on today, inspiring a new generation of planetary explorers. Agencies like NASA, Roscosmos, and others continue to apply the hard-earned lessons from Venera as they develop next-generation missions aimed at probing the mysteries of Venus, Mars, and even more distant worlds. Looking forward, the Venera D mission represents the next exciting chapter in Venus exploration. Combining the experience and innovation of two major space agencies, Roscosmos and NASA, this upcoming mission will deploy an orbiter, lander, and possibly an atmospheric balloon. These tools will work together to conduct comprehensive studies of Venus' atmosphere, surface composition, and geological activity. Scientists hope to uncover clues about whether Venus may have once harbored liquid water or even microbial life. Ultimately, the Venera D mission aims to answer some of the most fundamental questions about Earth's closest planetary neighbor and the conditions necessary for life beyond our own world.